In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you ever needed to know about creatine. We're going to talk about what's the best dosing, how to reduce the side effects, what are the side effects, what's the best form, what's the best brand, are gummies worth the money, is creatine a steroid, is creatine cocaine, is this cocaine? I don't know. And most importantly, what are the benefits and should you even be taking it? Creatine has absolutely blown up on social media recently, but is it worth the hype? First off, what is creatine? Creatine is a molecule produced in the body from amino acids. The body naturally produces creatine. Most of it's produced in the liver, and its primary function in the body is to help with energy production. Creatine is also found in food, mainly in animal products, especially meat. The word creatine actually comes from the Greek word kreas, which means meat. Now, the body produces around 1 gram per day, and if you're eating animal products like meat, you're probably consuming around 1 to 2 grams from your diet. Creatine is also one of the most studied supplements of all time. And unlike a lot of supplements, it consistently shows benefits. The most commonly studied dose is 5 grams per day. However, some newer studies have used doses of around 10 grams per day, and some studies have even gone somewhere in the realms of 350 to 400 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, which ballpark works out to around 25 grams for someone who's 70 kilograms. All right, so what are the main benefits of creatine? The primary benefit, the most studied, most consistent benefit is an increase in strength and power output during resistance training. Now, on its own, it doesn't actually increase muscle mass, but because of the increase in strength and power, if you combine it with resistance training, it can lead to an increase in lean muscle mass compared to placebos. Now, a lot of people worry about creatine causing weight gain. Well, I just mentioned how it can increase lean mass, so that's a form of weight. And it can lead to anywhere from 1 to 2 kilograms of body weight gain. Primarily though, that is from water retention. Creatine helps to pull water into the muscle, which is why you must drink more water if you are supplementing with creatine. And the higher the dose, the more you want to increase the water intake. But we'll get to that soon. So it may help to increase lean mass. It also leads to an increase in water retention. That's not to be worried about. If you stop taking the creatine, you're going to lose that water retention. You're not gaining fat. Don't stress. A lot of people still worry about that. So performance is the main thing creatine's been studied for. But this 10-gram dose, this is where it becomes interesting for brain health and cognitive function. Things like depression, mood, sleep deprivation, alertness, memory. I can't remember if I said memory. Maybe I need some more creatine. Especially if you're not consuming enough creatine from your diet, so for example, vegans or vegetarians, supplementing with creatine can be extremely effective for improving not only exercise performance and just general physical performance, but mental performance as well. So while the evidence is nowhere near as established for brain function, mood, all these cognitive benefits as it is for the physical side of things, I think this is an area that's developing and I'm very excited by it, and that's what I personally do. I take 10 grams of creatine per day because basically the muscles are greedy. They will take the first 5 grams. 5-gram dosages don't seem to have too much of a consistent impact on brain function, but when you start to go up to the higher dose, essentially the way that it's probably working is the muscles are taking the first 5 and then the remainder is able to be uptaken by the brain. It does cross the blood-brain barrier. So there are tons of other benefits to creatine, but they are the main ones. So I do have the 25-gram dose here as well. This hasn't been studied anywhere near as much, but there is some interesting evidence to show that it might help with traumatic brain injuries, a trauma to the head, common in things like sports, contact sports, concussion basically. And also in sleep deprivation, help to offset the reduction in cognitive function. Now, these are not doses that you would do daily. This is more designed for a short period of time, for example, the day after sleep deprivation. And it's definitely not a replacement for medical treatment for a TBI or for sleep itself. The 25 grams is also commonly used for loading. So people will load up on creatine when they first start taking it, usually for a period of like 5 to 7 days, and then go down to a maintenance dose. I don't really believe this is necessary. I believe that most people should just start at the 5 grams. The main reason for this is because there's not much of an extra benefit to this over enough time. This high dose loading phase is far, far more likely to increase digestive symptoms. Which brings me to the next section, which is how to reduce the digestive symptoms that you might get with creatine supplementation. I actually didn't take creatine for a long period of time. I do take a lot of supplements. I just forgot about creatine basically. So anyway, I went and bought some creatine and I wanted to do the higher dose, which is the 10 grams, because I wanted to get the cognitive benefits. So smashed down 10 grams first morning and then I was immediately on the toilet. It was quite crazy. And this is actually relatively common with people taking creatine. Some people are more sensitive, but there are definitely ways that you can offset the diarrhea and the digestive discomfort that you can get with creatine supplementation. First and foremost, you need about 300 to maybe even 400 mils of water for every 5 grams. This is to dissolve the creatine. If the creatine's not dissolved, it can have an osmotic effect and pull water into the bowels and then cause loose stools or diarrhea. That's step number one, more water to dissolve the creatine. Now, creatine does degrade into creatinine, which is not an active form of creatine and shouldn't be supplemented with. This happens over time and also when it's exposed to liquid and heat, which is one of the problems with these bad boys, which I'll talk about soon. So the best strategy is to put the creatine in a large bottle of water and dissolve it and just sip it over a period of time. If the water's cold, it's gonna dissolve less. If the water's warm, it's gonna dissolve more. You got room temp, warm water can dissolve it about 50% better. Cold water dissolves it about 50% worse. So more water and some warm water, but make sure it's not hot, otherwise it can degrade it. So more water, warm water, but not hot water because hot water will degrade it faster. The other thing you can do is you can have it after a meal. This seems to be better tolerated. And the other thing is you want to use a micronized creatine monohydrate. The first creatine that I got when I got back on the creatine wasn't micronized. Creatine monohydrate is the best form, the most studied form of creatine. And if you get a micronized form of creatine monohydrate, this dissolves better in water. Some of you may have heard of Creapure, which is German creatine, German-made creatine. This is a micronized creatine monohydrate, and it's regarded to be the best quality, but it generally is more expensive. I've now got this one from Chief. This is also a micronized creatine monohydrate. It's not Creapure, so it's probably made in China, but it has been quality tested. I don't necessarily think that being made in China is a bad thing. I guess we just got to be cautious with the quality of the creatines that we're getting, but this is assessed for contaminants, so I'm confident with that. But Creapure is also another good option. So there you go, warm water, more water, micronized after a meal if you need to. That should solve all your problems. And split the dose up throughout the day. If you're taking a 5-gram dose, split it up into 2.5 grams, so half and half, or even more if you need to, depending on how sensitive you are. Now I'm going to answer some of the most frequently asked questions about creatine in a second. But first off, we've got to talk about the gummies. If you're going to go with gummies, this might actually be one of the better options, but let me break down why gummies probably aren't the best option for most people. Now, like I said before, when you expose creatine to heat or liquid, it starts to degrade into creatinine. Now, creatinine doesn't have the effect that creatine does, and it may actually be damaging to the kidneys. James Smith has done a whole YouTube series on this, on exposing the creatine gummies. Most of them don't actually contain creatine, whether that's deliberate or not, it doesn't really matter. A lot of creatine gummies do not contain the creatine that they say they do. Now that's actually one reason why this might be all right, is because this is actually HASTA certified, which means it's certified for sport. They randomly batch test these. So I'd be confident that this does contain the creatine that it says it does. But compared to something like this Chief powder, this is 50 cents per 3 grams. This is $2.50 per 3 grams. So this is 5 times the price for the gummies. Now you might be happy to pay that, but obviously when you're getting into the higher doses, that's gonna add up quite a bit. For example, for 15-gram serve, that math's too hard for me actually. Let's go for a 9-gram serve. This would be $1.50 and this would be $7.50. So it adds up because you want to be taking creatine every day to get the most benefits from it. The other thing is you can't actually get that much creatine into a gummy. So one gummy contains 1 gram of creatine, but then you're also getting about 8 grams of sugar. So to sum up, let's say you actually are getting creatine, which a lot of creatine gummies do not contain the creatine they say they do. You're also paying about 5 times the price for that creatine, and then you're also consuming a decent amount of either sugar or artificial sweeteners in other ones. Now, I will say though, they taste pretty good. They're very sweet though, but I can see why people are drawn to having these. I've had these sitting around for a week and I have been eating them just because they taste good. But this is not where I get my creatine from. I will be doing this. I do these in water. I mix it in with some electrolytes for some flavor. It doesn't taste bad and it's a lot more cost effective. And I can be confident that I'm getting the creatine that I think I am. Now we can't let all this creatine go to waste. And unfortunately, this isn't a snortable white powder. So let's do an FAQ. If you've got questions about creatine after this, make sure you drop them in the comments. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe. So the most common question I get, will I gain weight? Like I said before, yes, you will gain weight. But it will be water weight, it won't be fat, and some of it might actually be muscle, so it's not a bad thing. The next one is, will it help me grow muscle? And the answer to that is yes, as well. But like I said before, it has to be combined with weight training. It doesn't just grow muscle from sitting on the couch. So then you might wonder, is it a steroid? The answer to that is no. They can grow muscle if you're sitting on the couch. However, if you are competing in professional sport, that's where you need to go for one that is HASTA certified, to be sure that it doesn't contain steroids. Does it cause hair loss? Well, the research tells us no. That's based on a myth. And I lost my hair without taking creatine. So should women take it? Yes, women have just as much need for creatine as men do. It may even help with some symptoms of perimenopause and As a generalization, women don't eat as much meat, so generally probably don't get as much from their diet either. Now, does it cause cancer? It's a little bit unknown because in some cell studies, it seemed to have some cancer promoting and suppressing. Human research suggests that it may be cancer protective. Is it safe for your kidneys? Answer to that is yes. If you already have healthy kidneys, and you're actually taking creatine and not creatinine. If you have any kidney disorder or disease though, you need to speak to your doctor. Does taking it with caffeine counteract it? I would argue that the answer to that is no. There is some research to say that it might from a performance perspective, but that's pretty weak evidence. And depending if you're using it for cognitive benefits, then it would actually be beneficial to combine with caffeine. Is it safe during pregnancy? I would say answer to that is yes. However, that's only based off my studies. We don't have any human studies to prove definitively that it is. I would be going on a more cautious approach towards that, maybe a lower dose, or if you're very concerned, no. But if it was my baby, I would probably have a small amount of creatine. Should you take it with food? It actually doesn't matter if you take it with food, but like I said before, you don't need to take it with food, but taking it with food can potentially help to reduce some of those digestive symptoms. Do you need to load it? Like I said before, no, and I think the majority of people shouldn't. Does it help with depression? Some research suggests yes. Some of that research was on a 5-gram dose, but I would personally be going on a 10-gram. Does it increase testosterone? The answer to that is no. Can it help with methylation? The answer to that is actually yes. I think it's around 70% of the body's creatine that it produces goes towards producing CME, which is the kind of master methylation cofactor. So supplementing can take a bit of a burden off methylation in that way. Can you get enough from food? The answer to that is yes. Technically you can, but it's going to be very hard to get to these higher therapeutic supplemental doses unless you're eating a heap of red meat. So I think probably makes more sense to just supplement. Not saying, like I think eating more red meat is good for most people, but to get a lot of these benefits, it's going to be pretty hard. Does timing matter in the day? The answer to that I would say is no. However, it can lead to insomnia for some people. If I take too much, especially late in the afternoon, I find that it does affect my sleep. Creatine has been shown to help with alertness. And then also it can help with energy production, like I said. So taking it in the morning makes more sense to me. And how much should you take? Well, I've already covered that earlier. I recommend powder. I don't really recommend gummies. And that's pretty much everything. But if there was anything that I missed, drop it in the comments. Or did I already say that? I need more creatine, I can't remember. Hopefully this is everything you ever wanted to know about creatine. Line?
Make sure you don't forget to subscribe.
Make sure you don't forget to subscribe and have a blessed day. And don't forget to take your creatine.